The hallway of the Piedmont Grand Hotel smelled like gardenias and champagne. Naomi Warren stood in a beaded cocktail dress outside Suite 4, holding an envelope she had carried for 3 days. Inside that envelope an account she had never seen. 8 months of bank statements proving her fiancé had come to confront Marcus before tomorrow's wedding. She had not come to find her sister in his bed. The door was not locked. Marcus sat up first. Keisha did not bother to her collarbone without urgency. Naomi might as well hear it from me. 11 months. Behind Naomi, the elevator opened, pulling the sheet. Gerald Warren stepped out with Diane beside him, both dressed for the rehearsal dinner downstairs that ended 27 years of obedience. Gerald looked at the open door. Close that door, Naomi. At his daughter's face. You're embarrassing this family. And then he said the sentence, not Marcus, not Keisha. Naomi. She looked at her father. And in his eyes, she saw something worse than that night without calling a single calculation. You need to understand the rule that governed her Naomi Warren life. Walked 8. In the Warren household, silence was worth more than any daughter. Naomi's mother, Evelyn, mourned quietly. Died when Naomi was 14. Gerald buried his wife on a ovarian cancer and returned to the office late on Wednesday. Treated poorly. Grief, in his vocabulary, was a distraction. 2 years later, Gerald married Diane, her daughter from a previous woman who understood exactly what the Warren name into was the family with the precision of a campaign inside it. Diane brought Keisha. Keisha was charming, photogenic, and socially fluent. Naomi was quiet, for 2 years, competent, and inconvenient. Gerald called it space for the new family to settle. Naomi was sent to live with her grandmother. Naomi called it exile, Georgia, but never said so out loud. When she returned at 20, she went straight to work at Warren Construction, the company her father ran. Every night. From memory, she was efficient. The recipes her mother had written in a small leather notebook. She never complained. That smelled like cinnamon and old paper. That notebook was the only inheritance Evelyn left behind that Gerald could not convert smile into and equity. The kind of confidence that fills a room without earning appeared 3 years ago. Gerald approved immediately. A real estate broker. Marcus was manageable. He asked permission. He wore the right suits. He laughed at Gerald's jokes. Spent her entire life. The engagement felt less like a proposal and more like a merger. And Naomi, approval of Marcus, who had for approval of her. The night of the hotel, Naomi tried to solve the situation the way she $43,000 from their joint account and into one registered to Keisha. She called the bank. She called the management company for her apartment. The lease was in Gerald's name. She called her closest friend from college to explain that the call went to voicemail and that she found out later that Gerald had already called. In the span of 4 hours, Gerald Warren dismantled his daughter's life with the efficiency of a man demolishing a building. Were changed by morning. Naomi was the dress she was wearing. A handbag she had grabbed from the car. The envelope full of bank statements that no longer mattered to anyone but her. She walked past the hotel valets, the rehearsal dinner she was supposed to attend, past the parking garage where 300 guests were already being told that the wedding was postponed due to a family matter. 8 miles through Atlanta in heels she eventually carried. She stopped at a loading dock behind a commercial building, but because her legs to the hotel chose it for her. A man was sitting on the concrete steps of the service entrance, eating from a plastic container. He wore a maintenance uniform. The sleeves were rolled to the elbows, and even running from both wrists past his elbows, Naomi could see the burns climbing the left side of his neck. He had watched the scene from the hotel steps 2 hours earlier. The woman thrown out, the father pointing, the sister smiling from the lobby window, and a door that locks from the inside. He did not ask what happened. Naomi looked at him. The kitchen inside has a stranger with scars offering a locked door to a woman with nowhere to go. It should have frightened her, accepted. Instead, it was the first sentence anyone had said to her that night, climbing the stairs did not contain a command, carrying a bag of groceries. She looked at Naomi's dress, at her bare feet, at the mascara dried on her cheeks. Questions at the man. No forms. Elijah. No explanations. The service room on 3 Naomi slept on a thin mattress. The girl needs a room that smelled like detergent and old wood. It was the first night in 27 years that no one expected. Housed 11 tenants, a laundry room. The building was called the Langford, and a ground floor kitchen that Miss Adelaide Turner, 4th Ward, had converted into a community dining room 9 years ago. She cooked for the elderly tenants, workers from the hospital, could not cook for themselves. She did not. She fed the night shift. People simply knew. Naomi stayed 1 night, then 2. On the 3rd morning, She walked into the kitchen and began cooking. Onions, chicken thighs,
She did not ask permission.
rice, a jar of
She
peach
washed her
preserves
hands,
that had been
opened the
sitting
refrigerator
untouched on the top shelf, and started working with. By noon, 11 plates were ready. Miss Addie tasted the chicken and set her fork down slowly. She served the plates. That's not restaurant
Within a week,
food. The kitchen had a rhythm. That's somebody's mother. Naomi cooked breakfast and lunch. Naomi did not answer. Miss Addie handled the evening. Neighbors who had never eaten downstairs started appearing. A construction worker from 2 blocks over brought his daughter. And a retired postal carrier started coming. Careful Elijah began eating at the table instead of on the steps outside. He never said the food was good. He simply kept coming back. Leaking pipe on the second floor. Naomi learned Elijah the way you learn a building would not close by what creaks at night. The laundry machine that he fixed violently during the spin cycle. His hands were precise and patient despite the scar tissue that made gripping difficult. Everyone else with economy. He paid his rent in labor. He never removed his long sleeves in front of anyone. At night, Naomi heard him through the wall. Not words, sounds. The muffled groan of someone biting fabric to keep from screaming. The creak of a bed frame. She had been listening to her own version of it through damaged nerves. On the fifth night, she mixed shea butter with eucalyptus oil and calendula, a remedy her mother used to make for neighbors with arthritis. The jar was empty by morning. She placed the jar on his doorstep, and another once. On the 8th night, he opened the door while she was still standing there. You don't have to do this. I know. The scars don't get aside. Neither does she enter the apartment, small, but you still come to the table. Nothing on the walls. He looked at her for a long time. For the first time, she applied the salve directly. Her hands on his forearms, working the tissue the way you work dough, slowly, but he did not pull away. With pressure that respected the resistance. The first dinner they shared alone, he did not Naomi set 3 plates. His jaw was. Elijah looked at the empty setting. Who's the third one for? Whoever needs it. He studied her face. Something shifted behind his eyes. Your mother? Anyone. Not a wall coming down. My mother started. A window opening. She said a proper table is never full, to check if the air outside was safe. 2 weeks after Naomi arrived at the Langford, Keisha Warren posted Southern a photograph cuisine on social original media. Recipes, a long events. Table, white linen. The menu featured peach glazed chicken, brown butter cornbread, and a bourbon sweet potato soup that Naomi recognized immediately. Every dish was Evelyn's. Gone through the bedroom. Keisha had taken the notebook. She found the leather-bound recipe book. When Gerald's people cleared Naomi's apartment, beneath a photograph of Evelyn at a church picnic. She took the book and left the photograph. Kitchen Naomi for 20 minutes without Miss Addie, who had seen the article shared in a washed her hands group, and began cooking. Add on 3 dishes, then 5, then 8. The counter filled with food. No one had ordered. Miss Addie walked in. Naomi surveyed the chaos and sat down. You knew my mother. When your mother was upset, Carter, before she was Evelyn Warren, she cooked at the Founders' Day picnic for First Emmanuel Church in 2004. Best her grandmother's cast iron skillet I ever had in my life. Addie paused. I told her she had a gift from God, and she told me God had nothing to do with it. He attended the same church, built things with his hands, like somebody else I know. Naomi felt the kitchen tilt, said nothing. Odom. She let the silence work. That was the old name. The company. Miss Addie, before my father changed it. How long have you known who Elijah is? Since the day he moved in. He has his father's hands and his father's habit of hiding pain behind work. I wasn't sure it would be you. She looked at Naomi directly. But your mother's daughter was always the best. I've been waiting for someone with strong enough hands that night to open that. Naomi was applying the salve to Elijah's forearms when she asked the question she could no longer hold. Did not. What is your full name? Odom. Muscles beneath her hands went the name that used to be on my father's building. Elijah Odom. Not like it. It is the same name. My father founded that company. His name was James. Admitting the ground beneath her partner had opened. Her fingers worked the scar tissue while her mind rearranged every memory she had. Because stopping would mean the framed photographs on the wall, the company history page that began with Gerald Warren, 2015, Elijah told her. As though nothing existed before. James founded Odom & Associates with $20,000 and a reputation for building things that lasted. Gerald Warren came in as the business side, downtown. Contracts, financing, expansion. That the budget was too thin. The company grew for proper safety compliance. Gerald pushed for a large commercial renovation. Gerald signed the safety certifications anyway, falsifying the electrical inspection reports to keep the project on the site alongside his father. The fire started in the wire. James ran back into the structure to pull out 2 workers trapped on the second floor, working. He did not come out. Elijah went in after him. He saved the workers. He could not save 26 surgeries. The ceiling came down on his arms and shoulders. Gerald's lawyer was already sitting by the bed in a burn unit. An agreement, a non-disclosure, a settlement paid into an account Elijah could not access until he signed away every right to investigate, alone, litigate, or speak publicly, no family member present. His grandmother had been told he was recovering privately and preferred solitude. He signed. As an electrical Gerald renamed the company within the year. The settlement money ran out in 3 years. Of James Odom was most of it consumed by medical bills the insurance did not cover. Elijah disappeared into maintenance work, small apartments, long sleeves, and silence. He finished. 11 years. She asked one question. Naomi listened to all of it. Did he know it was dangerous? Her hands did not stop. Elijah looked at her. Your father signed the inspection reports knowing they were falsified. I saw the documents before I signed the agreement. The smell of eucalyptus filled the small apartment. They made me return every copy. Outside, a siren kept working the salve. She understood now. The company, the house, the cars, the hotel, the wedding, the life, all of it was built on the night this man lost his father and his skin. Probably. But I'm not. I need you to know something, she said. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Naomi's life. She carried 2 truths simultaneously. The man she was learning to love no longer destroyed by the man who raised her. She went to the community clinic on Auburn Avenue, everything she once called Dr. home. Miriam Kalu, on a lie a burn specialist who volunteered there on Wednesdays, agreed to teach her. 12 hours over 3 visits. At the end of the last technique for chronic burn contractures, held Naomi's arm. Nerve pain management, range of motion. Like your husband, long pain, long shame. Some of them develop a habit. When the nerve pain becomes unbearable in silence, they create a different pain to drown in. A cut, you hear me? A burn, never something alone. They control. Naomi heard. You ever find a... She returned to the Langford that evening. Elijah was furious. She had been gone 12 hours without explanation and said, he accused her of leaving where it hurts. She showed him her hands, raw from practice on simulation. The first time she applied the clinical technique, he gripped the mattress so hard the frame groaned. The second night, the silence he managed to breathe had changed. By the 4th night, now knew who he was slept and what her father had done. For the first Elijah time now knew that she knew, and neither of them had said what that meant for everything between them. Original NDA. The fracture came on a Tuesday. His signature, shaky, Naomi medicated, barely legible. Old mail Elijah kept in a shoebox. The witness line was signed by Gerald Warren's personal attorney. The date was 9 days after the fire. 9 days. Elijah did not deny it. You knew who I was from the beginning, Warren, she said. I saw it. The night at the hotel. You let me. My name was on the envelope. You let me cook for you. You let me touch your scars. And you never told me that my father is the reason you have them. Did. If I had told you the apartment was very quiet, you would have left. Naomi picked up the jar of salve from the table, placed it on his doorstep, I know what everyone else outside, and closed the door between them. For 2 days, neither spoke. Meanwhile, the third plate had been found empty. His attorney for the first time it felt like a bank account to the Langford's address. When Gerald saw the name Elijah Odom in the building's tenant records, his reaction was immediate. Delivered an ultimatum. He called the building's owner, a man who owed Warren Construction for a renovation kitchen, and where the debt comes due in full within 30 days. Simultaneously, Diane secured Keisha a catering contract for the most prestigious event in Atlanta's black community. At the historic First Emmanuel Church, annual benefit dinner hosted by Ruth Odom's event featured Keisha's food. It would legitimize the stolen recipes permanently. And Gerald calculated Miss Addie attended First any future connection between Naomi. Miss Addie had Ruth Odom's personal phone number. What Gerald did not know Miss Addie had already carried a container of Naomi's peach dessert to Ruth's kitchen 2 days earlier. Ruth tasted it. Daughter's hand spoon down. Closed her eyes, said. And her daughter's taking Evelyn Carter's someone you've been looking for. It's her. Ruth did not need to hear the name. She had kept an empty chair at her dining table for 11 years. She knew exactly who Addie meant. She did not go made her decision on the morning she went to the building owner and asked, calmly, exactly how much was owed. She went to Dr. Kalu and requested Elijah's medical records. Pain, with his written authorization. She went to Miss Addie and asked documenting the burns. their origin, the invitation to Ruth and the 11 years of untreated chronic, and she went to the kitchen. She cooked the dish her mother never wrote down, never on paper. Evelyn's finishing dessert, the recipe that creation that changed with every season, that existed only in knowledge passed from skin to skin. Then she went to Elijah's door. The salve was still on the doorstep, untouched. "To that dinner with me," he opened. "Because your grandmother kept a chair empty for 11 years. But I understand you. She won't want to see me, and she'll want to see you anyway at all." The night before the dinner, she tried. Naomi heard silence from Elijah's room. She did not leave. She remembered Dr. Kalu's words. She walked to the kitchen. She took a glass from the shelf. No answer, and broke it against her own palm. Then she pressed her bleeding hand to the door. "Elijah, I cut myself. I did that on purpose." He opened the door, and the only key that opened this door. He looked at her hand. He broke, then at her, not dramatically, the way a man breaks who has held himself rigid for 11 years and finally meets a force that will not stop. Blood and salve mixing on the tiles. She bandaged her own hand. "No more locked doors," she said. "We fight your soldiers on the bathroom floor." The morning of Ruth Odom's benefit dinner at First Emmanuel Church. 300 guests, positioned the most influential families in Atlanta's black community. Set up her catering station with Gerald and Diane arrived early, who had never been questioned. Chef Lorraine Banks, food critic, cookbook author, and the woman who had documented Evelyn Carter's cooking at a church festival 20 years ago. Naomi and Elijah arrived last. Table. She pushed his chair up the ramp herself. The murmuring began immediately. Gerald saw them from across the room. He did not move. Chicken, he could not. Set her fork down. The dinner proceeded. The room. Keisha's food was served. She did not speak yet. Chef Lorraine tasted the peach glazed. Then Naomi stood. She walked to the kitchen. She asked the church staff for 20 minutes. No notebook could capture because it lived in timing. She prepared the finishing dessert. Pressure, peaches, in the way Evelyn taught her daughter to listen to bourbon hand, and the technique. She carried the plates out herself. Lorraine tasted it, closed her eyes. Cooked at the Founders' Day celebration in 2004. I wrote about her, and I never forgot that. What I am tasting right now is the same tradition, but it's grown. It's matured. She looked at Keisha. What you serve This is what a recipe becomes. Evelyn's recipes carried by the person it was meant for. I recognized them immediately. You have the words, but this, she gestured to Naomi's dessert. Keisha's face collapsed. She memorized it from your mother. It's in the hands, Naomi said quietly. The room shifted, could not boil 300 water, people recalibrated. And this recipe is not in any notebook. Naomi, enough. You've destroyed enough for one lifetime. Ruth Odom rose from her chair. That carried my son's name for 20 years, Mr. Warren carries yours. Before you speak about destruction in my church, explain to this room why the company. Elijah moved forward. He did not hide. He did not shout. His voice was steady. Open the door. The steadiness of a man who had rehearsed this moment in locked Elijah for 11 years. James Odom finally had a reason to. He died in a fire on a construction site 11 years ago. I was there. These scars are from the same fire. Dangerous. He looked at Gerald. The reports were signed anyway. Safety inspection reports for that site. I saw the documents before I was made to sign them away. My father warned that the wiring was in a hospital bed 9 days after the fire. Without a lawyer, without my family, without anyone who could have told me. The original fire inspection reports, the real ones, have been with my attorney since investigator Monday. I hired 6 years ago. I've waited 11 years for my grandson to be willing to speak. Tonight, he speaks. Gerald reached for Diane. She looked at his hand. Was already moving toward the exit. The scarred, capable hands that had fixed pipes and window frames. Ruth, and held Naomi's bleeding palm on a bathroom floor. I thought I lost you the way I lost your father. Removed a ring from her own finger. I was here, Grandma. A gold band that had been in the Odom family for 4 generations. Ruth turned to Naomi. She placed it in Naomi's hand. The woman who brought my grandson home when no one else was looking just has a seat at this table for the rest of her life. When it involves falsified safety records, Gerald Warren was not arrested, coerced non-disclosure agreements, and 11 years of institutional silence does not arrive in a single scene. It arrives in depositions, in subpoenas. The investigators submitted the original accountability that Gerald had spent 11 years the following morning. The NDA was challenged in court, signed under duress. Without legal representation, the company Gerald built on James Odom's foundation began to answer for what that foundation had cost. Faced a formal. The magazine profile of Keisha's table was pulled. The notebook of Evelyn's recipes was returned. Keisha left it on the kitchen counter of the Langford without She did not answer. Marcus called. A week later, Naomi and Elijah were still at the Langford. Ruth offered them the family house. They declined. "When we're ready," Elijah said. One phone call from Gerald. Ruth understood. She had not survived 78 years by rushing the things that mattered. Capable of it. He said 5 words. "Your mother would be ashamed." Naomi was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she said. Acknowledgement from a man standing at the edge of everything he had built. It was not reconciliation. Looking down at the crack that was not forgiveness. It was the smallest possible. Evening at the Langford. Naomi set the table. 3 plates. Elijah walked in. For the first time, on a towel. The answer was not grief. He looked at the empty setting. "I don't know yet. Who's the third one for?" He smiled. It was not a large smile. It was the kind of expression that costs Sal 11 years and a bathroom floor. The one with the scar. On the table beside the plate to reach him sat a leather notebook and a jar rested on the table next to his hand, where the scars from the fire her father caused still mapped every nerve. The kitchen was small. The light was warm. The chair was empty. And the table was ready.